Nice picture there.
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I will bring the November 18th, 2025 regular council meeting to order. I'll start with our land acknowledgement. The City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta, District 11. We recognize that we stand upon land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. The City honors the First Peoples of this land and is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. And we have some guests today in the audience, so just a few housekeeping items. The emergency exit is through the chamber doors, or if that's blocked, we're just heading out this way. And if you don't know where to go, just follow us out. Bathrooms are located in the main lobby. All right. First, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Anybody will do. Councillor Blizzard.
I just got to get it up again. I make a motion that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting.
Thank you. Is there any changes? Not seeing any. Close the motion. That is carried. Moving on to delegations, we don't have anyone pre-registered to speak. Don't think anyone else in the audience is unexpected, so we will move on. We have a few items listed under the consent agenda that I'll be looking for approval for. 5.1, approval of the minutes of the August 26, 2025 regular council meeting. 5.2, approval of minutes of October 28, 2025 organizational council meeting. And 7.5, schedule emergency advisory committee meeting December 9th, 2025. Councillor Ketcher.
I'll move that council approve those agenda items as just read into the
record.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll accept that motion. Is there anyone who'd like to speak opposed? Not seeing any. Cast your vote. And that is carried. All right, moving on to presentations. First up, we have item 6.1, 2025 audit plan. Welcome up Colleen Wagner to introduce our guests.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Colleen Wagner. I'm the Senior Accountant in Financial Reporting for the City of Fort Saskatchewan. And today I'm pleased to introduce Sheldon Jacobs. He's a partner with KPMG, and he's going to go through our 2025 audit plan.
Thank you. Welcome back, Mr. Jacobs.
Good afternoon.
Ready for you.
So I'll walk you through our audit plan for fiscal 2025, which was circulated to the Mayor and Council prior to this meeting. Just moving on to the highlights page. The scope of our work for fiscal 2025 remains very similar to past periods. We will be charged with the responsibility to audit the consolidated financial statements of the City of Fort Saskatchewan. We will also audit the municipal financial information return, which is a specified document that is prepared for the use by the provincial government. We will also audit the City of Fort Saskatchewan's Library Board financial statements. I personally met with the Library Board last evening, and we reviewed our audit plan for the library board yesterday, and that was approved. And then there's also some program reporting for the FCSS program, which we also provide some audit services on. So again, substantially the same as prior periods from a scope perspective. In the document, it talks a little bit about the concept of materiality, but I'll touch on that right now. As presented to council in past periods, we calculate what we call materiality when we scope and we do our audit procedures. The city has a budget in excess of for close to $100 million. So as a result of that, we have to have sort of some gauge or some level that we use as we perform our work. That materiality number this year is $2.8 million, which is identical to the amount we used last year. That doesn't mean that we don't audit or look at balances or transactions less than $2.8 million, but that gives us a bit of a gauge that if we're finding any errors in the financial statements or any type of misstatements in the financial statements that are kind of approaching that number or getting anywhere near that number, that this financial statements could be material and misstated. And it also keeps our people from auditing really low, insignificant, inconsequential balances or transactions in the city. So again, very consistent with past periods. Your financial statements are consolidated financial statements, and what that means is they include both the accounts of the city and the accounts of the library board. We talk about audit group strategy in this first highlights page, actually, yeah, there we go, yeah, in the left-hand column. And basically, the accounts of the city make up almost 100% of the consolidated accounts in your financial statements. And the library board makes up a very small proportion of those financial statements. So for purposes of your audit, we do not do any additional top-up procedures on the library board in addition to the procedures we do on the standalone financial statements of the library board. In terms of new matters this year, one item that's going to be a little bit different is, and going forward, is the endowment monies from the Dow Chemical Group. That is a bit of a different type of a transaction. So we've had some preliminary discussions with your accounting and finance folks on those monies and how those could be presented and accounted for in the financial statements going forward. So that is something that's a little bit different this year, and you'll see what that looks like when we get to year end and we actually look at the and review the financial statements. The right-hand column of this slide just talks about significant risk areas. One of the areas that we focus on in any audit is the potential for there to be override by management or administration. So we'll always have to be cognizant of any organization has a series of and a number of internal controls, and those internal controls are put in place to help ensure proper financial reporting, but management is in a unique position and can potentially override such controls. So we do give consideration to that in the course of our audit when we do look for potential errors or misstatements in your financial statements. Saying that, there's no others, and that's a risk that's embedded in every audit that we do, so we're not targeting specifically the city or the city's financial statements. Other than that, there's no other specific risks associated with our audit that we need to raise to the council today. However, when we do present our findings in 2016, well, I guess in April, if there's anything that comes up that wasn't contemplated at this point in time, then we'll raise that with council when we do that presentation. The next slide just speaks to the concept of materiality, so I won't go through that in detail because I've just touched on it. Same thing with the next slide. Slide 7 speaks to that group audit scoping, so it shows you sort of a delineation between the assets and the revenue of the city versus those of the library board, and basically numerically shows how insignificant the library board is relative to the consolidated statements of the city, and we don't need to do any top-up procedures for the purpose of your audit. The page, slide 8, talks about the concept of overriding controls, as I had mentioned. So things that we'll focus on will be testing specific journal entries during the course of our work. We do a retrospective look at any estimates from prior years. So to the extent that there was any significant estimates in past financial statements, we looked to see whether those estimates were reasonable in light of subsequent events and information. And then we will assess the rationale of any significant or unusual transactions that we might identify during the course of our audit. Moving on to page 9 speaks to the concept of irregularities and fraud. Again, it's something that we have an obligation to have an open dialogue with council on. You will receive, before our year-end audit commences, a questionnaire that will be circulated by administration on our behalf to the mayor and all council members, asking a series of questions about knowledge of, and if you have any knowledge of any irregularities, fraud, or any unusual transactions. When you complete that questionnaire, they'll come back to me and my team. We'll look at that, and to the extent that there's anything abnormal, then we'll make sure that we design audit procedures to address that or have further conversations with council. Page 10 is really just our key milestones and deliverables. So that's just a schedule of our various activities between now and our final reporting to council, which is currently scheduled on April 28th. So our key deliverables and key action items are listed there, and I don't plan to go through those in any detail. The remainder of this document basically has 3 appendices. One speaks to KPMG's audit quality framework. Another one speaks to some of the enabling technologies we use during our audits. And then there's some thought leadership insights that if you use the PDF version of this presentation, you can click on the links, and there's information there that might be of use for any of the council members or the mayor. And I don't plan to go through those in detail. They're really for your information purposes. So with that, that formally concludes our presentation of our audit plan, and open to any questions.
Thank you very much. Not seeing anyone quite yet, so I'll just, now they're all popping up. Thought you guys would be faster. Ms. Wagner, may I ask, do you, from the city's perspective, do you see any challenges with this particular audit year?
At this time, no, not really. And he did kind of touch on our extra grant funding that we did get this year. So that will probably be a big piece of the audit. But otherwise, no, I don't foresee any issues.
Thank you. All right, I'll open it up to other members of council. Councillor Nguyen.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Given the unique position of a municipality, our revenue streams, user fees, subsequent service levels that a municipality is able to provide that ultimately attest to the quality of life that we're able to provide. What performance indicator should a municipality of our size evaluate so we as council can have utmost confidence we are receiving the best value for our services?
Through your mayor, it's a really good question. A bit of a difficult question for me to answer in that a financial statement audit, the audit that we're specifically engaged to deal with, is specific to performing procedures over your financial statements to ascertain whether or not they've been prepared in accordance with the standards for the preparation of municipal financial statements. So we look at things like, do the transactions exist? Are the and again, in all material respects. So do the transactions exist? Are they complete? Have they been recorded in accordance with the basis of accounting? We really don't dive into what I'll call sort of value for money procedures per se. It's really about testing and providing some assurance on the recorded transactions and balances in the financial statements. During the course of the audit, though, if we do come across opportunities to improve internal controls, or if there's opportunities from maybe just some business improvement opportunities that we do notice, those are more of a byproduct of a financial statement audit, and we will raise those either to administration or we'll include them into our final report. But in terms of specifically looking at specific programs and assessing the value of those programs for the money spent, that's not really in the scope of an external audit.
Thanks for that answer, and I appreciate the context you gave to it as well. And I think, yeah, it's important that we as a city council are able to have confidence in the fact that the financial audit is really a reflection of our financial health, which then, I think this is what is conclusive to your statement, which then gives us the opportunity to work at utmost efficiency.
Yeah, and also at our presentation in April, to the extent that there's any significant findings, those will be reported, and then we'll discuss them with council at that point in time.
Thank you.
Perfect. Councillor Wesley?
Awesome. Thank you, Sheldon. Just as a means of background, I'm an analytical person, so I look at your Appendix 2 with excitement. And so just looking at your AI transaction scoring, could you maybe explain how that scoring methodology works and how you use it to detect anomalies?
Sure, and through your mayor. It's a very good question. The use of AI is kind of leading edge or bleeding edge, depending on where you are on that time sort of continuum right now, because we're really at the early days of it. But KPMG has developed a number of procedures that we use, or technologies, enabling technologies we use during the course of our audit. So we have procedures that will look through journal entries, for instance, and will identify higher risk criteria. So where it sees an entry going to one account, but then the opposing entry going to another account doesn't make sense, it'll pick up on those for us, and it'll say, you know what, team, you guys got to look at these in more detail because it doesn't make sense to it. We can run routines on transactions. So we have in our technologies right now, maybe I'll just back up. Historically, auditing was really based on testing. So if you had 1,000 transactions, we would use a statistical sampling plan that would give us a number of transactions that we would have to test. And if we found any errors in that population, we can extrapolate those errors on a statistically valid basis. And if we found no errors, we can statistically have some degree, a reasonable degree of comfort that there wasn't further errors in the population. That testing methodology still continues, and it's not like we're abandoning it. But what we're doing with some of our AI technologies is we're taking, instead of a subset of the population and subjecting it to audit testing, we're taking the entire population, we're putting it through our technology routines, and there's about 15 different types of exceptions that these routines look for. And to the extent that a transaction or a balance passes all 15 of those tests, then we consider any error to be, or any risk of error in that population to be quite low. To the extent that it doesn't populate all and pass all, and depending on how many tests it may fail, these transactions may end up in what we call a medium or a high risk bucket. Depending on whether it's a medium or high risk bucket will then dictate how much additional work we do on those balances or transactions outside of just using the technology. So it's really a combination of people power and machine hours to assist us in doing the audit work. We're still in the early years of using AI in our technologies, but we're getting further and further every year to subjecting full populations through our technology as opposed to just relying on testing.
So audit sampling probably going to be a thing of the past when
I don't know
we're
if it'll
meeting together
totally
again
be,
in 10 years?
It may not be totally eliminated, but it's going that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your answer.
Yes.
Councillor Randhawa?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs, for coming out today all the way to Fort Saskatchewan and presenting to us on this always exciting topic. A couple questions for me. So you talked a little bit about materiality, setting that at about 2.8 million. Can you kind of explain how that benchmark relates to other municipalities and how we as a council can be assured that even if things are below 2.8 million, they don't kind of slip through the cracks throughout this process?
Yes, through your mayor, I'll address that question. We have generally a standard approach within KPMG in terms of how we audit our municipalities. So we have specific templates or audit routines that we use for municipalities because we do a number of municipalities right across the country. So in terms of developing our templates and our routines, what we're doing is we get some degree of consistency in terms of how we audit municipalities across the country. I also am part of our national municipal group, and we meet every couple of months to talk about anything that's emerging from a financial reporting perspective or from an audit perspective that we think is important to share with our colleagues across the country. So then again, you know, if somebody's seeing a risk or a typical error in some element of a municipality's financial statements, we share that information so that we all are kind of looking for the same thing if such common risks exist. When it comes to materiality, we're very standardized on materiality as well. Typically, the materiality range is anywhere between 1 to 3% of the budgeted, forecasted expenditures of a municipality. We're sitting at roughly 2.8%, so kind of close to the 3% threshold. That's not uncommon. What dictates where we sit on that continuum between 1 and 3% is a lot of times is really historical experience. So with the city of Fort Saskatchewan, we do not have a history of finding a lot of significant errors. Your financial reporting in past periods was put together in a quality fashion, and because of that, we can walk into the audit expecting that, you know, the controls in place should be functioning in all material respects, and we're not expecting significant errors. In a municipality where maybe they don't have the same level of expertise that you have from a finance and accounting perspective, where we find lots of errors, we then would lower that materiality level, so it would require us to do more testing. An audit, though, is kind of a living creature. So we start today with this $2.8 million. As we start doing some interim field work actually beginning of December. As we do our interim field work, we look at the results of that work. If all of a sudden we're finding issues or we're finding circumvention of controls or we're finding errors, then we will lower that materiality because clearly we need to look deeper and dig deeper. And so if we ever do significantly impact our materiality levels, or if we significantly alter our audit plan, we will report that to council in April, just so that you know, this was our intention back when we met in November. However, based on the work that we did, we ended up here. This is why we ended up here. If we adjust materiality down to 1.5 million, there'll be a good explanation and a fulsome explanation as to why that was the case. Okay. But I can assure you at this point, pretty much industry standard.
Awesome. Thank you very much. The other question I had was, you talked a little bit about like management override as kind of a presumed risk, as it is, I'm assuming, in every organization.
Correct.
Similar to ours. What specific kind of controls are you going to go out and test in relation to that?
Well, a few of the things that we look for are odd journal entries. So that's where somebody may have, your systems, your accounting systems are keeping track of your various transactions, and they may come up with a balance of X. Now, is there somebody motivated in administration or management to manipulate that number so it's not X anymore and it's Y in the financial statements? So we would look at the journal entries or any other adjustments that are made to get from what the system is telling us or what we've been auditing to what the financial statements are showing, to see, can we reconcile those numbers, or is there any concern that there's any integrity issues with those numbers? So that's one place that we would look at, is any of those kind of adjustments that are outside the system, or sometimes what we call top-sided adjustments. They're booked above and beyond kind of what your system creates. The other thing is we look for, as I mentioned earlier, we have these routines that look for entries that don't make sense. So maybe bring this down to kind of accounting 100. If you sell something, usually you'll have debit your cash account and credit your revenue account. So if we have a situation where we have a credit to a revenue account, but we have a debit somewhere else, so it went to tangible capital assets or some other account that doesn't make sense, we look for any of these large entries where the debits and credits don't make sense. And then again, if we see transactions that just don't look normal or consistent with what we've seen in the past, or consistent with what we would expect to see in a municipal environment, then we would dig further on those types of transactions as well.
Okay. Last question for me was just in regards to like what success or good looks like for council. So if we come back in April beyond like a clean opinion, let's say, what else are indicators council should look at for things that we should take away from this audit, as well as understanding where like the value of this process was really?
Yeah, sure. So a few things there. First of all, you're right, is a clean auditor's opinion or an auditor's opinion without reservation. That's the starting point. If you have one of those, then you know there's something that has to still be dealt with and hasn't been fully dealt with. The other thing is we will provide you with a list of, not the trivial items, but a list of the more significant misstatements we may have identified, errors that we may have identified, or changes that we may have suggested to the financial statements. So we'll provide you a list of that. Typically, my experience over the last few years with the cities, that list is very short. If you have a long list of items, then that's sort of a bit of a red flag that there's a skill gap somewhere that's missing. The other thing would be is if we found or we came across any material deficiencies in internal control or significant deficiencies in internal control. We don't test all the internal controls at the city, but we do test specific ones that we rely on. And we do have an obligation, a professional obligation, to advise you of any that might be considered significant deficiencies in internal control. So it's probably the three main areas that you'll see in our findings report that we will issue and speak to in April, that if any one of those is kind of lengthy, then it's, there's probably reason for further discussion on that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Nguyen on round 2.
Thanks. I'm going to take off from that question and just ask something maybe a little bit further, and the risk of making it awkward with our staff, and it's not going to happen. But are you satisfied with the effectiveness and the number of layers of our organizational controls within the city of Fort Saskatchewan? Would you say that is in a very healthy position right now?
Through your mayor, to answer that question, as I was previously alluding to, is we do give consideration to certain internal controls during the course of our audit, but we don't test them all. We don't test all your internal controls. So it's a little difficult for me to answer that question broadly because I can only comment on the ones that we've tested in the past, and I don't have a list of those with me, but we have not uncovered any concerns relative to the ones that we've tested in the past. The other thing that we look at in all organizations, including with the city here, is what we call entity level controls. So those are the higher level controls that are either evidenced by a functioning council, some of the key controls at the highest level of administration. So maybe that would be related to budget controls, forecasting controls, raising if there was any whistleblower issues or fraudulent activities or illegal activities that should be addressed and or raised with council. We look at those higher entity level controls. And I can say based on the work we've done historically, there hasn't been anything that was a cause for concern to report. But in terms of, you'll have hundreds of controls throughout the organization. We don't look at all of them.
Right, I appreciate that answer. And I guess that would have to be a directive or another request from the auditor if we wanted to go. But without any, with a clean audit that we've seen year after year, there would be probably no cause for a request of that type.
Well, we give consideration to the results of past audits when we plan our audit, and I guess we can get some level of comfort here is in our planning document right now, there's no specific area of focus or concern that I'm raising. Maybe that's the best way I can answer it. If there was, it's pretty standard in terms of what I'm presenting and pretty consistent with past periods. If there was something that was concerning, then we would have, that we're aware of now, we would have addressed that in our audit plan to council today.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'm not seeing any more questions for you, Mr. Jacobs. Thank you so much for being here today. If triannual reports or tax payment waivers sound interesting, you absolutely could stay and watch, but if not, you guys can sneak out whenever
Thank you.
you'd like. We are going to move on to 7.1, May-August 2025 Interim Triannual Management and Financial Report. We're going to keep Ms. Wagner up here and welcome Clayton Northey to join her. Good afternoon.
All right, so you're stuck with me for just a little bit longer, hopefully. So I'm going to present today the August 31st, 2025 interim report. So this looks at where we're sitting in the first 8 months of 2025. I also have Clayton Northey with me, Manager of Financial Reporting, and he's going to answer all the hard questions. So we'll start this off. So in our operations, as you can see in the chart, August 31st year to date, we are sitting at a $6 million surplus. And this is due largely to the major projects that are happening in our community. So our permitting revenue is very high at this point. And at the end of the year, we are forecasting a 5.27 million surplus, 5.2 from municipal operations, and about 70,000 surplus from utility operations. The expected surplus includes 3.4 million in net revenue that is directly or indirectly, again, related to the industrial development in and around Fort Saskatchewan and is non-reoccurring. The portion that is reoccurring represents less than 2% of budgeted revenue. Revenues are forecast to be 4.6 million higher than budget at the end of 2025, and this is a result from the higher than normal user fees and charges, again due to our industrial development, which is about 2.4 million of that, and an increase in related services, which is about 287,000. Access for everyone, the Dow contribution, which we kind of touched on in the audit, that the auditors will be looking at the grant that we received from Dow, and also Fortis reimbursements for new streetlights. Investment income is higher due to increased bank balances, interest rates on those bank balances, and investment yields. Property taxes are a bit below budget, and that is due to the 75% payment that we receive from the province for their properties. Operating expenses are forecast to be 1.7 million lower than budget for 2025, and this is a result from purchases from other governments being below due to staffing vacancies at the RCMP station and lower than budgeted water supply services commission rate. Contracted services are a bit higher than budget due to projects carried forward into 2025 from previous years, and these are offset by grants and reserve funding. Service maintenance contracts are a bit higher than budget, and this is due to mainly an increase of usage at the transfer station. Other items are forecast to be, 1,058,000 higher than expected, and that's due to the Dow contributions for the new aquatic facility. Moving on to our financial position. So as shown on Appendix 1 highlights the changes in the city's financial position during the first 8 months of 2025. This includes a net increase in the city's net financial assets of 12 million compared to August 2024. This is mainly due to increase in our cash and cash equivalents. And you will see on the slide presentation that it's increased about 25.7 million and investments decreased 18.6, but that is just due to the timing of investments and the interest rates currently. Property taxes receivable increased 1.3 million, and this is due to the increased participation in the monthly tax installment plan. Long-term debt has decreased 2.1 as debt repayments are made and minimal debt has been added to this point until we look at that pool. Moving on to the capital program. The 2025 capital program included 24 new projects and 25 multi-year projects that were carried forward from 2024. At the end of August, the city had completed 8 projects, while 41 were still in progress, and the city has spent $10.9 million on capital expenditures in the first 8 months of 2025, compared to $13.3 million in 2024. This includes the aquatics facility budget of $72 million was approved to begin design and construction. The JRC modernization was completed in June of this year. Heritage Trails Park Phase 1 has been completed, and disc golf course at West River's Edge was open to the public in August. Okay, financial reserves. At the end of August, the city had $77.2 million held in financial reserves, of which $17.3 million is committed to ongoing projects and $59.9 million is uncommitted. The city's total optimal balance for 2025 is $49.8 million. So at this point, the stabilization and contingency reserves and infrastructure lifecycle reserves were both underfunded by $3.9 million each. Overall, the project's reserves, specific purpose reserves, and restricted reserves in total were collectively overfunded by 7.3. However, in these reserve categories, not all of them have optimal balances. So there is a bit of adjustment there for being over the optimal balance. And at this point, I have no other comments. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them for you.
Perfect. I'm sure there's going to be several, so we'll get started here. Councillor Wesley, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Colleen. Just looking at the reserves specifically, the 2 big reserves, could you maybe give a new councillor a little context as to why those are underfunded right now?
Okay. Let's get into that. Just trying to find the full reserve report that we have in the T2 report. Sure.
With respect to the stabilization and contingency reserve, it's really the optimal balance is something that moves every year based on the operating budget. We keep topping it up. Like really short version is that we do keep topping it up, and we do draw down in every so often. But by and large, the optimal balance has been increasing quite a bit faster than the optimal balance. In the last, I think it increased about $4 million in the last between 24 and 25.
Okay. And so how quickly would we try to top off those reserves? So as we go from where we're at now to the optimal balance, how quick a process do you envision that happening?
Typically, and keep in mind, we are looking at a larger than normal surplus. What we'll end up doing with that is allocate that out to the reserves when we come back in April and we have the final numbers. Generally speaking, the budget team tries to bring us back to optimal balance over a 5-year period.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Councillor Ketcher.
Okay. Kind of similar topic, talking about the reserves. So a number of years ago, we decided to put in optimal balances. But I guess hypothetically, how do you ever get to the optimal balance when we continue to take the money out for all the projects year to year? Because as you know, we're going through a budget right now and we're drawing a whole bunch out of different reserves.
Through the mayor to Councillor Ketcher, the contributions, I believe this was part of the reason why we amended the reserves policy. I believe it was last year to break out project spending versus stabilization and contingency spending. Historically, those two were really, particularly the municipal operating projects and the utility operating projects, were part of either the financial stabilization or the utilities reserve. Typically, we've been getting fairly close to our reserve optimal balances for over a number of years now.
It's okay. My next question comes to the point when we're talking about $5.2 million to $6 million surplus, and I see salary and wages are under by $458,000. Police are under by $875,000. So when it comes to the salary and wage component of these, and I'm not sure if this is for you or for Mr. Fleming, how is it that we're not managing the salary and wages component of this to ensure that it's more accurate? And I only ask that because as we talk about our operating budget, you're asking for more staff, you're asking for more money, there's more salary and wages requested, and yet if we're not even utilizing what we have, what seems to be our problem?
You go ahead if you.
Maybe I'm going to try here first and then pass it to Mr. Fleming. I would comment that the salaries, wages, and benefits function right now is just over 1% of our current. The surplus is just about 1% of our operating, our surplus, our staffing budget. That would be right where we would want to be to manage fluctuations normally.
Yeah, through your worship, we do, through the mayor, we do analyze and manage that particular line every year. Like Mr. Northey said, it is pretty close. If you'll recall, I think it was in this budget year or last budget year, because we do have an amount that we write down every year to deal with the fact that staff turnover happens. I don't know if you remember 8 or 10 years ago, we were running $1 million plus surpluses in there. So each year we try to determine an amount to write it down by so that we're not collecting too many taxes to cover our wages. But I think, and so we will probably in an upcoming budget at some point have to look at this, and we may be able to increase the amount that we write down, which would effectively lower the amount of taxes that we collect to cover it.
Okay, and I think that's the question that I have, because when we're saying to the public a 10% increase, but I have a $6 million surplus, it makes us as council look bad, which, you know, is a reflection on all of the city.
Yeah, through your worship, through the mayor, I'll probably just take the opportunity then to maybe put in some of my own commentary. The surplus amounts that we have been pretty reasonable the last number of years. I think we've actually run deficits in, was it 2 of the last 3 years? Small ones. But it does show you the precision with which we budget with has been really good lately. The $6 million, the important part about that is the story that's behind it. When we were running the larger deficits, again, 8 or 9 years ago, I would really say that was probably more inaccurate budgeting, and when we had the big salary surpluses and other things. If you look at a lot of the main drivers of the surplus, they're actually sort of one-time in nature, and I don't think there's really many actions that we would take to correct it. For example, the biggest driver of it has been heavy industrial permits. Like, that's a really good news story. But it's difficult to budget for those because we don't know exactly when they're going to come in and how much they're going to be for. Because sometimes these companies will do them in 2 or 3 batches, or sometimes they'll do one big permit. So things like that. The RCMP were struggling with their staffing, I think, earlier. They've really corrected that, and they've got more boots on the ground now. So that should correct itself. So if you look at a lot of these things, yes, it's a higher surplus number than we're comfortable with, but the reasons behind it are generally one-time in nature and good news stories. So
I'll ask more questions during budget on Thursday.
Thank you. I'm just going to insert myself in the rotation here. Mr. Fleming, you sort of took the words right out of my mouth, because my comment was going to be on the surplus, and just that typically when you have this type of surplus, it is a negative news story for the city, and it's and people are looking at you to say, like, right, exactly as you said, taxes are going up and we have this surplus. But it is, as Mr. Fleming said, a good news story, right? And so it's really exciting to be able to say, yes, we have this surplus, but wow, it's $3.4 million in industrial development permitting. And so when the story is out there that, you know, Dow is slowing down or there's some uncertainty, having this revenue coming in is showing a little bit more lost my word there, a little bit more certainty that these projects are coming, even if they're a little bit slower. So yeah, my comment was just going to be on kind of the positive news story around our surplus. Going on to the next person, Councillor Blizzard.
I prefer a surplus to a shortage, so I kind of like it. It is big. So when we have a surplus, it goes into the financial stabilization fund, right? A reserve.
Mayor, through to Councillor Blizzard. At the time when we report the surplus after the audit to council will get to determine where those, we will provide suggestions, but you guys will get to determine where the money goes into.
Traditionally, that's kind of where it's gone though, right?
Usually, but if there, with our optimal balances, if there's another reserve that needs to be topped up, we would probably look at those first.
Sounds good,
You
because
guys
that's my
would be
point.
approving.
So you, right now, you're showing that our optimal balance is 3 million higher in that financial stabilization. So we actually have enough to top that up and either make a dent or do something else with the money, right? Yeah, something to look at when we look at budget. Thank you.
Councillor Rendawa.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I had some similar questions to the ones that were asked previous, so I'll skip those. On the surplus, I share some of the concerns from Councillor Katcher. It's always tough when the public asks, are we being overtaxed, when about 6% of our budget comes in like unspent almost. And I understand where you're saying it's coming from. I guess more in terms of the policy we have for surpluses. The latest one I could find said it was supposed to be revised in like 2020, I believe. Is there a reason we haven't revised that, or is that the new website not showing me the latest revision?
Through your worship, through the mayor to Councillor Rendawa, we've been programmed too hard. That policy may be due for a revision. We have I believe you're referring to the operating budget surplus policy, which directs us essentially to review our reserve optimal balances and make recommendations based on those to top up where needed and make transfers where needed. We may not have looked at that since the last time it was updated, simply because we've been using it and we've been updating actually the reserve policy almost annually. So that's probably more the reason why that one hasn't been updated, and it's been working fairly smoothly.
Okay, because I was referring to the allocation of operating budget surplus policy. I want to say, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but when it became a policy in 2017, I think I put a motion for it because we had large surpluses then, but I believe the surplus kind of towers in comparison to those. So then maybe a broader question to administration is that a yes, we'll be bringing this policy for review at some point between now and April, or maybe?
Mr. Fleming, do you have when that was last done?
Through the chair, I don't have a timeline for it. We do know that this policy needs work and needs updating, so maybe I'll just take that as a sort of an information item for today, and let me talk with the team and see what their timelines are.
Cool. Thank you. I guess in terms of the overall, when I'm flipping through this and kind of like a new counselor question for myself, if I compare the 8+4, like the 8 months versus the 12 months, do we straight line it for 8 months versus 12, or do we use some basis to that methodology?
Your mayor through to Councillor Rendawa, are you kind of talking about how we're spreading the budget?
Yeah.
Okay. So we, every year at the beginning, usually in January, February, we'll take the budget and it will be spread based on actuals. So it's not necessarily just spread between the 12 months. If there's something that comes due in March, the money will be budgeted to come to March so that we don't have those fluctuations in the budget.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Another question in regards to capital projects that's kind of mentioned in the report. So it said like, I think 41 of the 48 are remaining, 7 have been completed. are those remaining ones on time, on budget? Or is there any ones that we need to be flagged or aware about?
To your worship, to Councillor Rendawa, for the most part, we have been on time, on budget throughout the year. There weren't any significant ones that we intended to flag this period. There is a couple that were over budget from prior years that just carried over with funding that had been transferred to them from prior periods. But in the current period, we were more or less on where we expected to be.
Okay, so I'm sorry for the specificity of this question. For the most part, meaning like they're all on time, on budget, they're 90%, 95%, like where should my concerns go towards when I look at these capital projects, or should there be no concerns? I know that's a very specific question, so it's okay if you don't have it on you.
Your worship, Councillor Rendawa, again, most of the projects that we have are actually on budget. We did have some that were coming in with surplus that was really complete, where our vehicle sales have actually been higher than our gains from vehicle sales were.
Sorry, Mr. Northey, your microphone is off for some reason.
Good catch.
My mistake. The fleet services and equipment services sales, when we were surplus equipment, have come in at a higher level than what we were expecting. So we do see a surplus in there. Again, specifically, the Leslie McMillan Park Outdoor Rink, that really was a project from prior years that is more or less complete in the first quarter this year. That would be the most significant variations from what we were expecting. Most of our engineering structure programs are on time, where we would expect them in completion towards the end of this year, and I think there is some slippage in some of the even the vehicles have been. Vehicle purchases have been more or less where we expected them to be at this point.
Okay. Maybe
Councillor Rendawa, do you have many more questions?
can I finish this question, then I'll pause?
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
if that,
Yeah,
yeah, no
perfect.
worries, I get it. Maybe a request to Mr. Fleming then. Could we get like just a note saying out of our capital projects which ones are slipping and which ones aren't, or if there are any slipping?
Yeah, through the chair, we can get a sort of a basic update on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect. And we'll come back to you if you have more questions. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to refer to page 8, the capital budget highlights. I have a couple questions just about the numbers and as they're displayed, and make sure I'm reading them correctly. On page 8, our expenditures for 2025 are listed in the column on engineering, structures, vehicles, buildings in the negative. How is that possible? I think I know maybe the answer to this, which is a comparison from forecasted versus budgeted, but I'm not sure.
Through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen, that's just really a drawdown against we presented those as a negative against the authorized expenditures. As a negative, the spending we've spent in 2025 to the end of August, just shy of $11 million.
Sorry, which one are you referencing?
Engineering structures, we've spent just shy about 3.5 million.
Right, 3.5 billion is actually what's been spent to date. Then,
yeah,
is how that's read. Okay, thank you. And then on page 12, sorry, I just lost this. On page 12, I have a question about cash and cash equivalents, which the question would be what is the cause for this significant increase in cash?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen, cash and cash equivalents were higher at the end of August 30. Really, that's it. Typically, year over year, it's always going to be our highest period, just because of tax collection, and making sure that we align where our short-term portfolio is going to be situated for the remainder of the year. At the end of August, in particular, we had, I believe it was a $9 million investment that matured right before period end, and we hadn't reinvested it as well.
Okay, and that's exactly addresses, what we mentioned. I know that we moved cash into investments as well last year, and that was reflected in this report as well, right? So it looks like there are a lot of things moving around in big tranches of funds, so appreciate that response.
Perfect. Councillor Randawa?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, bear with me, just a couple more questions. So page 43, I believe Councillor Ketcher kind of referred to this as like our vacancy rate for staffing. So I see an 853 there kind of for budgeted vacancy / rate allowance. So what kind of vacancy do we expect every year? Is there like a certain open rate methodology we use, or how do we get to that number?
Through the mayor to Councillor Randawa, that represents approximately a 97% of the overall labor costs being utilized, of the the compensation and benefits being utilized throughout the year. That equates to really is a combination of staffing or wage grid levels, as well as that vacancy rate. We make the assumption based over doing a review of our year-over-year usage of that.
Okay, so has it stayed constant over the years at around 97% or 3% open?
Through the mayor to Councillor Randawa, I know we did increase it a couple of years ago when we reviewed it, but more or less it's been right in around that area that we've had that budget amount.
Okay, and my last question, page 52, when we look at financial reserve balances and commitments. So our snow and ice removal, it's at about 367K, I believe, and it should be at about 1.3 million. Do we feel good about that going into snow season?
Through the mayor to Councillor Randawa, this one, it has been I think this was mentioned yesterday as well, but this is there has been drawdowns over the last couple of years. We'll do typically what we'll do is we'll first off at the end of the year, if we need to draw it out of this reserve, that's when we do the adjustment for that one. We would do it at the end of the year. If there's a drawdown required, we'll also be looking at that through the allocation of the operating budget surplus recommendation that we make to council.
Okay, so there's no other year-over-year consistent like input into that reserve. It's just from a surplus.
Through the mayor to Councillor Randawa, yes, it's so when the snow and ice removal is significant, because there's a fairly significant impact when we have a heavy year versus a light year. The heavy years end up being funded by the savings are put in from the lighter years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Ketcher?
Just on that topic, though, we set up these reserves. So like the snow one, we say we should have 1.5 million in there, which I would disagree with. But I thought that's what the financial stabilization reserve was for. So at the end of the year, you have a surplus, and it goes into stabilization and any other one that we see. But it sometimes feels to me like we're setting up all these reserves, making payments into them, but then we have the financial stabilization reserve. So why do we continue to do that? Doesn't it make more sense just put the money into the financial stabilization? If we have an overage one year, you take it out of there. If you're surplus, you put it back in. So what's your answer?
So through the chair, if you look at I don't know, it's page 15 on my document for the report. The snow and ice removal reserve is a stabilization contingency reserve. Like it's listed right beside the financial stabilization and contingency. The reason it's listed out separately because I mentioned that period of time we had, again, I was 8 or 9 years ago where we were running huge surpluses, and the snow and ice budget was one of the sources of that surplus. So if you had a year when it didn't snow very much and maybe we only got out and cleared the snow once, we were running a huge surplus. So the decision was to reduce that budget and have a fund of money where if you're under in a given year, that particular surplus goes into that particular reserve. And in the years when you're over, you can pull from that reserve, and administration just makes the adjustment automatically. Whereas with the financial stabilization and contingency reserve, that would require council approval to draw from. So it's just that money. I agree with you. You don't want to have too many different reserves and all these different pots of money. But that particular one functions slightly differently because it's kind of an operational program that has a really variable cost from a year-to-year basis. So we could fold it into financial stabilization and contingency and just use a different strategy as well. But that was the strategy that we picked at the time.
But under our policy, any reserves that we're drawing funds from, wouldn't council be responsible? So you just couldn't do a churn?
The adjustment, I guess, gets made by council at the end of the year, regardless. But yeah, the idea was it's just that one reserve is meant to help us deal with that one program, which again is very difficult to budget for.
And I only asked the question because I know a while ago we had a whole bunch of reserves and then we consolidated them. We said we don't need them, that it's better just to have the one. So just throwing it out there.
Yep.
All right, there are no more questions for you. Thank you very much. All right, so for our next item, there are 3 tax penalty waiver requests. I do understand that there's several members of council who wish to go in camera to discuss. So before we have the presentation from Trish Norman, then I'll take a motion to go in camera, and Ledge Services does have that motion to put up on the screen. Just Councillor Blizzard, do you want to read in the motion?
Sure. I make a motion that council move to close session at 3 p.m., 3:01, to discuss 2025 tax penalty waiver requests, ATIA section 220-4, harmful to personal privacy.
Perfect. And this will be our opportunity to ask any private questions about these tax payment waiver requests that should not be discussed in public. Is there any debate on that? Not seeing any. Call the question. And that is carried unanimously. This is not a break. We gotta go straight upstairs. All right, welcome back. We are out of in camera and we are moving on to 7.2, 2025 tax payment waiver request. Trish Norman presenting. Oh, your mic, there you go.
There we go. Good afternoon, Mayor Macon and members of council. My name is Trish Norman, Revenue Services Coordinator with the city. I'm here this afternoon to request council's decision regarding 3 property tax penalty waiver requests. The first one is regarding property tax roll 455-3452. And the motion before you is that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 455-3452 in the amount of $644.37. On September the 16th, 2025, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application along with supporting document from the property owner requesting a waiver for property tax late payment penalties in accordance with property tax penalty waiver policy and procedure FIN 029C. As of September 23rd, 2025, the property owner has paid the full balance of outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties. The property owner has made an application for council to consider late payment penalty reimbursement under compassionate grounds, as outlined in the supporting document. Administration is not authorized to waive these penalties since the authority is prescribed to council as per the Municipal Government Act. The city relies on property taxes for the funding of city operations and requires that taxes be received on a timely basis. Late payment penalties are used to encourage compliance with payment deadlines and to mitigate the operational cost of processing late penalties. The city provides notice and time for property owners to pay their property taxes, and there are several payment options available, including post-dated checks, online payments, and the Ford electronic payment plan. Sections 344, 345, and 347 of the Municipal Government Act address penalties for late payments of property taxes and council's authority to exercise discretion to cancel, reduce, or waive these penalties. The city imposes penalties on July 1st of 3%, August 1st of 6%, September 1st of 9%, and 9% on January and February 1st of each year. These penalties are established through the user fees, rates, and charges bylaw for non-payment of taxes by the due date. Pursuant to Section 4.2 of the Property Tax Penalty Waiver Policy, Council may consider penalty waivers when there is an error in fact, when penalties are associated to a property which is exempt from property taxes, where there are compassionate grounds, or in accordance with other matters that Council deems acceptable. Administration recommends that this request to waive the late payment penalties be denied since the application does not align with the criteria in the policy. And I can now answer any questions.
All right, so it is open for questions. These would be general in nature and do not speak to any private information on the tax roll. Seeing no questions, is someone willing to put the motion forward? Go ahead, Councillor Nguyen.
So I'll make the motion that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 553452 in the amount of $644.37. Is that right? Thanks.
455-3452, correct? Okay. I'll accept the motion. Is there any debate? Seeing none, I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. You can use your hand counting if that's faster. Did you hold it up? Oh, sorry. Are you waiting for anyone else? Oh, good. And that motion is defeated. We'll move on to 7.3.
The next request is for property tax roll 4706046. The motion regarding this request is that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 4706046 in the amount of $772.28. On October the 7th, 2025, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application along with supporting document from this property owner requesting a waiver for property tax late payment penalties in accordance with the policy. The property The property owner was notified of the outstanding taxes by the previous owner, at which time they contacted the city. They indicated at that time they did not wish to pay the property taxes until the land title had been updated to their name. As of October the 7th, 2025, the property owners have paid the full balance of outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties. The property owners have consequently made an application for council to consider late payment penalty reimbursement under compassionate grounds, as outlined in the supporting document. Administration recommends that the request to waive the late payment penalties be denied since the application does not align with the criteria in the policy. And I can now answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions on tax roll 470-6046? Not seeing any. I'll take a motion. Councillor Harris, would you like to put that one on?
I would move that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 470-6046 in the amount of $772.28.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion. Is there any debate? Not seeing any. Do you wish to close, Councillor Harris?
Nothing more.
I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That one is defeated. Moving on to 7.4, tax roll 0934,000.
The final request comes from the property owner of tax roll 0934,000. The motion regarding this request is that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 0934,000 in the amount of $463.83. On October 21st, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application along with supporting document from the property owners requesting a waiver for property tax late payment penalties in accordance with the policy and procedure. As of October 30th, 2025, the property owners have paid the full balance of outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties. The property owners have consequently made an application for council to consider late payment penalty reimbursement on compassionate grounds due to health reasons, as outlined in the supporting document. Administration recommends that the request to waive the late payment penalties be approved since the application aligns with the criteria in the policy. I can now answer any questions.
Councillor Andawa, do you have any questions or are you on for motion? Motion. Does anyone have any questions before he proceeds? No? Go ahead.
Thank you. I move that council approve the waiver of late payment penalties for tax roll 0934,000 in the amount of $463.83.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion. Is there any questions or debate? Not seeing any. Do you wish to close? I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that one is carried. Thank you very much. All right, we are now moving on to bylaws 8.1. Bylaws C2525, amend municipal development plan C3120 for first reading.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. My name is Shri Shinde. I'm the Acting Director of Planning and Development, and with me today is Taj Bonani. He is the Planning Officer, and he's going to present with me today bylaws C2525 and C2625 for first readings. Thank you.
Sorry, will you just turn on your mic? There you go.
Thank you, Shri. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of Council. My name is Taj Bonani. To begin this presentation, I'll provide some background information on today's topic. Apologies, sorry. In January 2021, Council adopted the Municipal Development Plan, which included a mobility policy stating what's in front of you here. Still can't hear me, sorry. In May of this year, Council adopted the Roseburn Area Structure Plan, which included a residential land use policy you see here in front of you, stating where practical, increase street-oriented development by reducing flanking block frontages along collector roads. In June of this year, Council passed a motion directing administration to prepare a report on 1, the rationale for the MDP mobility policy at the time, requiring street-oriented development along Collector and Ontario right-of-ways, and 2, the options and considerations for amending that MDP mobility policy in a way that would increase flexibility for street-oriented development to be along Collector and arterial right-of-ways. Then, in August of this year, administration presented the requested report, and in accordance with the report's recommendations, Council directed administration to prepare amendments to the MDP and Roseburn ASP. The amendments were to update the mobility and residential land use policy noted earlier in order to ensure the safety and operational efficiency of roads containing street-oriented development. As a result of Council's directive, bylaws C-2525 and C-2625 are now being proposed today in order to allow street-oriented development along Collector and arterial streets to be considered on a case-by-case basis. If approved, bylaw C-2525 will amend the MDP mobility policy 8.3.6 as highlighted here and included within the Council report. Additionally, if approved, bylaw C-2625 will amend the Roseburn ASP by updating its residential land use policy 4.5.1.7 to add the following language highlighted here and included within the Council report. Updating both these policies maintains the flexibility for allowing street-oriented development along Collector and arterial roads on a case-by-case basis while ensuring safety and operational functionality. The Roseburn ASP within its policy context section 2.0 refers to the MDP policy 8.3.6. This policy will be replaced to reflect the updated MDP policy. As for the communication process, should Council give first reading to these bylaws, a public hearing will be scheduled as per the Municipal Government Act with a target date of December 9th. An advertisement will be placed in the Fort Record for 2 consecutive weeks, with a copy of the proposed bylaws being available on the city's website and further promoted on the city's social media pages. Administration's final recommendation is that Council give first readings to bylaw C-2525 and C-2625 to amend the MDP and Roseburn ASP, and further that public hearings be scheduled. That concludes our presentation. I hope I wasn't too fast. Are there any questions?
No, you were great. Thank you so much. I'll go to questions on the topic. Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
So just a question of clarification. So in the past, we discouraged direct fronting houses and accesses off of major collectors. So this is giving some latitude, but not necessarily going to a full mill. We're going to allow this. Because I think Council expressed some concerns with some of the planning recommendations that were coming forward in these draft ASPs and land use bylaw amendments, where ultimately we would have the problem. We had a situation in West Park where ultimately it was supposed to all be rear-facing lots onto the collector and then access from inside the subdivision. So would this then, administration would, I would imagine, if this thing passes eventually, would then consider discussions with the developer to determine whether it is relevant and prudent in those unique situations, not as a general case.
Through the mayor to Councillor Harris, that is correct. So along the collector and even in some cases along the arterials, we are recommending street oriented. That doesn't mean the driveways off of those streets, probably something that is lane accessed can go along these streets, but it will be reviewed on case by case basis. As we noticed in the Roseburn neighborhood structure plan, there were couple of areas where it didn't work and we couldn't implement street-oriented housing irrespective of this encourage policy. So yes, the idea is we will make sure the safety is going to be mentioned, the operations are not going to be compromised. But if we could incorporate street-oriented housing where there is not a long fence, but you have interesting development along the streets, and better walkability, better walking experience, then that's what we would go for.
Yeah, I guess my general concern, if this thing were to be a de facto case in point, I don't necessarily want to see street-oriented development on major arterials or collectors unless it really is a unique situation. So my question is, this would allow that on a case-by-case basis. So that's the clarification.
Through the mayor to Councillor Harris, yes, that's correct.
Good, thank you.
So I'll just jump in. So I guess this is our first bylaw that we are doing as a new council. So just on process, today is first reading. The public hearing will be an opportunity for the public to come and talk about this and give their feedback. The developers would likely come in and provide their feedback then, and then we would have a chance for further debate after that. So just for our new member of council, that is the process that we're doing. So we have Councillor Ketcher next.
So I'm prepared to put the motion on, but if Councillor Wesley has a question, go ahead with him first.
You're good?
No, we're good. Councillor Harris.
Councillor Nguyen, are you okay with that?
Okay.
Whatever process suits you.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Ketcher.
Okay, so I'll move that council give first reading to bylaw C-2525 to amend bylaw C-3120, the City of Fort Saskatchewan MDP plan by amending policy 8.3.6 as presented. Not going to read it all in. And if I can just speak to it, when we received the MDP, and I think that was back in about 2020 when we were through COVID, it's a huge document and we were all online. So questions were asked, things were probably missed at that point in time. And this was one of them that after we reviewed it and we've seen the first implementation or request to have a traffic circle fronting and house fronting onto that traffic circle, it was like, no, something's wrong here. So that's why this change was really required and that motion was put forward. So I ask for your support on the first motion and that the public hearing be scheduled for December 9th, 2025.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Nguyen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a few questions. Let's go to the words as is written, and I want further clarification. I think Councillor Harris already began this dialogue. So we are talking about not encouraging street-oriented development by administration, however, encouraging the case-by-case analysis of it as it would be applied in developing neighborhoods. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen, yes.
Okay,
that's right.
And given that, can you give us just a higher level context as to what developer feedback and developer encouragement and perspective is on building a certain amount of street-oriented products within new neighborhoods?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen, as I mentioned earlier, it was the Roseburn Area Structure Plan and Neighborhood Structure Plan, which is where we implemented this. And there is still the housing typologies or housing types that work well along these with this kind of development. So developer was open to that. We saw another example that Councillor Harris mentioned, that was West Park. That was a different developer. And in our upcoming neighborhood structure plans, also developers are considering some housing typologies along these roadways, and we will look at them on case-by-case basis to see whether it works or not. So there is some interest, and we just have to look for the operationality of it.
Okay, and to that, if I can just round out this, I do have a couple more questions. But so from a planning context, the words "where practical" are used in this report. What in a planning context makes this practical or makes this impractical? How would that be construed from your professional standpoint?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen. So when we say where practical, we are basically looking at engineering and public works feedback, like So for example, from the snow storage to garbage collection, like are those things are going to make sense? Is it causing any issues from those perspectives? From reversing the vehicles into these roadways, like is that going to be an issue? So those are the technical things that we look into, and if those all work, then we say yes, this could work.
Okay, that's enough for now. Thanks. So I'll.
Councillor Randhawa.
Yeah. Thanks to Councillor Ketcher for some of that, I guess, history about where this is coming from. It's first reading. I look forward to the public hearing and kind of seeing the process roll out.
Councillor Blizzard.
I'll support this motion. It is first reading, and I look forward to maybe getting some feedback. I do believe that case by case is the way to go. As Councillor Ketcher said, when we have a traffic circle or some other development and we've got a high-speed road, it might be best to have rear-facing lots on those streets. I like the idea of front-facing, but it also presents some issues with speed when children are crossing and coming out of their driveways with a bike, and lots of accidents. There's a reason that in years previous it went to rear-facing to some of these major arteries, so we got to make sure we do it right.
Okay, on round two, I'm going to Councillor Harris first.
I'll support the motion as well. I think getting it on for first reading makes sense. Why I was opposed to it in the West Park situation is because West Park Drive was ultimately planned to be a totally non-front facing development all the way around. And the developer of the day brought in a unique situation which I was fundamentally opposed to because it changed the overall major context of the neighborhood. But in reflection, I think they made a good case, made sense in that case, and it is working. We only allowed parking on one side of the street as opposed to both, which would normally be the case in an arterial or a collector situation of this type, unless otherwise prohibited by our traffic safety bylaw. So I'll support it on that basis. And Councillor Ketcher was absolutely bang on. When we approved the municipal development plan, it was at a time with COVID that we were all online, and I can honestly tell you that I missed that policy context when it came forward, and that was on me. So in this case, we're now doing something new if this were eventually passed following public hearing. That would acknowledge it again, but on a case-by-case basis, which I think ultimately then should turn on its planning merits and how the neighborhood can benefit in that context. So I'll support it on that basis.
Thank you. I do have a question. I'm going to support the motion. I want to see where it goes with the public hearing and hear from the developers. But I'm just trying to understand how this plays out in real life, because I'm assuming, so we're looking at this because with Roseburn, there was street-oriented development brought by the developer, right? The developer likes it. Their next section of Roseburn, they bring another one that looks identical to that. And then what would you say is the city? Like, we're not saying that you can't have it. And if the developer brings something that shows all street-oriented development, what would we say?
To the mayor, so you would make those decisions at the neighborhood structure plan. Like in the neighborhood structure plan, the developer is showing where the local roads are, where the lane locations are. That's when the public works and engineers are reviewing, the angles of the roads, how the lanes intersect, are they going to work or not? So a lot of times at the neighborhood structure plan level, you will be able to see where the street-oriented development is going to be. That's where those issues will be resolved. And sometimes at the rezoning stage, when a certain housing typology is proposed, like we are asking for that information at the neighborhood structure plan level, so that shouldn't be a case. I think everything should be resolved at the neighborhood structure level, and council will get an opportunity to review it and make a decision on it. But in case at the rezoning level, we flag something, we can always come back and amend the neighborhood structure plan. So there is always say at those stages too, because subdivisions also go through the internal reviews, internal department reviews.
So we're going to see it at the neighborhood structure plan. But then it would be up to us to make that change. It would be a council decision, because from a planning perspective, there's probably nothing wrong with what they've suggested in a neighborhood. Isn't that fair that then it would end up being a council decision, case by case, whether or not we're going to approve it?
To the mayor, so we would review it like every local street and every lane during the neighborhood structure plan review. So those, and then the subdivisions are in accordance with that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how the roads and lanes are. So those issues shouldn't really happen at the subdivision state, but we would have addressed those issues through the neighborhood structure plan. Like that's when, if the planning, public works, engineering feel comfortable with that, then we would recommend council that yes, we recommend you approving this neighborhood structure plan. And where you see street-oriented development in the plans, you can ask us those questions like, are there any safety concerns? Like, how does this work? Like, but what I'm trying to say is you would be seeing it, you would be making the decision on that, you would get the chance to ask us those questions when those things are being planned. So
this one's a tough one, and I'm going to beat it up with just one. I'll make one more comment on it, and then I'll leave it for the public hearing and the further debate. But so I would say that the area in Roseburn that kind of sparks, right? Like when we're looking at this, planning had no concerns about that, right? It was a council motion that, hey, we don't like the way that this looks. So to me, what changes in this that planning would come back and say, because in my mind, planning thought that was, and I don't disagree with planning on that one. I didn't bring this motion, right? But planning thought that was acceptable. So this doesn't change anything in the way that planning looks at that neighborhood.
So there is just one detail.
Okay.
So this was flagged at the area structure plan stage,
right?
Which is a little bit higher level.
Okay.
And when we did the neighborhood structure plan, that's when planning addressed those changes. That's when we went and certain parts of what were shown as the street-oriented development were reverted and made non-street-oriented development. So that's the change that happened from the ASP to NSP level.
Okay.
So at the ASP level, it's a higher level policy. Street-oriented development likely would happen along these streets, but at the NSP level, we made those tweaks and decided where it could and could not happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you. I have more questions about this. At the moment, I don't see how embedding this into our municipal development plan is at all necessary or what it achieves. And I have concerns about this type of product on arterial and collective roadways. When I drive down these roadways and we've seen the extension of West Park Drive, I always have a certain degree of hesitation about whether children or dogs are in between vehicles or getting loaded or things like that. That it, to me, does weigh into the Vision Zero impact of this type of housing product in a larger capacity in Fort Saskatchewan. Having said that, this is a first reading. There is there's motivation from developers and from a planning context where we're going with our land use bylaw and 2 new area structure plans to have this type of development. I would ask planning right now, why haven't we seen a level of, perhaps to use your words, case by case analysis of the effectiveness in street oriented development, say Allard Way and other areas, and a real pros and cons approach to the proposal of embedding this into the MDP for what will result in more of this housing type. I guess what I'm saying is it's a further discussion that I wish to have, and that's from my position on what I've learned about this product and how I've seen it be built out from Forest Ridge and now, yes, further into South Fort and in the new ASPs.
Through your worship, or sorry, to the mayor, through the mayor to Councillor Nguyen. Maybe I'll just add some commentary here. In the August 26th report, we did provide some analysis on the benefits of this type of housing. For the most part, what we see is that it does help to slow down traffic speeds along these roads, and it does create environments that are more attractive to pedestrians. It's hard to put real numbers to the pedestrian volumes, but overall the aesthetics of the community are improved with this type of housing.
Yeah, I do remember the report that came forward. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not entirely convinced that is a direction that I support. So I'm going to leave my statement at that. I'll support first reading and would like to hear more information from developers, and then at that time we can debate second and third reading.
Councillor Wesley.
All right. I'm inclined to support this motion. I remember sitting in the gallery when I think with Councillor Harris, you raised the concern when this came up, and I can see how something like this can fall through the MDP, especially considering the time. So I'm sympathetic to support this.
Perfect. I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Ketcher, do you wish to close?
Thank you. Former mayor to current mayor.
That's right.
Now council. Yes. Yes. And during, okay, so on my close on this one, I think what was really important, was the fact that when this was brought forward, I specifically asked the developer what concerns that they did have. And because the way the MDP was written, it was shall, must. You have to do this. You don't have a choice. And when I asked that question, it was like, well, he didn't want all of front facing, and especially with the roundabouts. And then when I asked the question, it's because it's written within the MDP that it has to be that way. So that's why I brought up, well, maybe it should be on a case-by-case basis. And, you know, we need to have that flexibility so that we're making sure that our streets are safe. And this was, I believe, a 4-lane road or something. So it was going to be probably at the higher speed limits as well. You know, so I just really believe Roseburn is the first one that's come online as a new subdivision or as a new area, and I really think we need to get this right. So I think on a case-by-case basis makes sense that they can actually have that conversation and negotiation. I honestly believe planning's hands were tied at that point in time as well. So this just helps remove some of the red tape. People can have a conversation, and then if they truly don't like what's coming forward, they have the right to say that. So that's on my close.
Thank you. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Moving on to 8.2, C2625, amend Roseburn ASP bylaw C925 for first reading. Oh, we just need, I apologize. You're right. We just need to move on to the next motion. Councillor Nguyen, go ahead.
I have it already. So I'll move that council give first reading to bylaw C2526 to amend bylaw C9-25, the Roseburn ASP by amending policy 4517 and policy 836. Did you want me to read those?
As presented.
As presented.
Is great.
And further that a public hearing be scheduled for December 9th, 2025.
Thank you very much. I'll accept the motion. Do you wish to speak in favor?
Nothing further.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Seeing none, do you wish to close? Okay, I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. All right. Is there any notice of motions prepared for today? Councillor Ketcher?
Okay, and I have prepared this and given it to Ledge Services. So at the December 9th, 2025 council meeting, I will move that by the end of first quarter 2026, administration prepare a report on the options and considerations related to amending council's procurement policy FIN-020-C to prohibit a member of City Council from being hired as a subcontractor on city projects. And I will speak to it on December 9th.
Thank you. Is there any points of interest? Councillor Wesley?
I just want to...
I pushed the wrong button. Go ahead, sorry.
Can't see if it's red. Most of the time when I speak, I don't need a microphone anyhow. I just like to point out that for the Fort Saskatchewan Food Bank, we're rolling around to Christmas hamper season again, so you'll be seeing them in at the grocery stores. It's an important time of the year for them, both for meeting food insecurity for the needy folks in our community, but also it's an important fundraising time for them as well. And I'd just like add one more thing is a policing committee meets Thursday, 5 o'clock at the RCMP detachment. You're more than welcome to come.
Thank you. Not seeing any. We have any more? Oh, sorry. Councillor inquiries. Is there any councillor inquiries of administration? Not seeing any. We have several items to go in camera for under the Access to Information Act. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Go ahead, Councillor Nguyen.
I'll move that council enter in camera to discuss matters under the Access to Information Act.
Thank you. I'll call the question. If you put away your iPads, hold up your card. And that is carried. Thank you.